Good morning. Hello, everybody. Here we are back again. This is session 16. All right, and we're going to be looking at dealing with a term that has come down through the centuries as a mostly frightening term. All right, the term is called the Last Judgment. Ooh. Okay, so on page 33 of the text, in the 8th section of the 2nd chapter, which is the last section in the chapter, it's a section called The Meaning of the Last Judgment. So we're going to skip to paragraph 2, where Jesus says to Helen, "The Last Judgment is one of the most threatening ideas in your thinking. This is because you do not understand it. Judgment is not an attribute of God. It was brought into being only after the separation, when it became one of the many learning devices to be built into the overall plan." Okay? So, he says, you don't understand the term last judgment. You don't understand the term judgment. He says, judgment is not an attribute of God. All right? It came into the zeitgeist, is that the right word? It came into the psyche. Right? It just came into our experience here in the world of time and space after we believed we were separated from God. Right? We felt immediately guilty and had to project that guilt onto something. So the other was God, so he becomes an angry God, looking to get me because I separated, I destroyed the oneness. Now he is going to judge me guilty. Right? And this is all going on in my mind. My mind is very powerful, so it projects and it creates this whole world of experience here, human, physical experience. Even rocks and plants having experiences too. But the whole experience here, right? It became, so the judgment was brought into being only after the separation. And then the next part of that sentence, he said, when it became one of the many learning devices to be built into the overall plan. All right? Jesus is using words that we understand as if there's an overall plan. The plan is to remember that you never separated from God. That's basically the plan. What he's talking about here is that everything that we have miscreated, so to speak, everything that we've made can be used to get back to the realization that we never left our source. Okay? So it became one of the many learning devices. Okay? So we can use judgment as a learning device. It says, it is essential, however, all the way down the bottom of that paragraph, sentence 8, it is essential, however, that you free yourself from fear quickly, because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. He says that's how it's, that's how it's going to end, so to speak. Free yourself quickly from fear. In other words, free yourself from the ego thought system. Free yourself from that belief in separation that automatically brings fear. Right? The detour into fear. Right? That wandering into that forest. Right? we think we did something wrong. Oh, I believe I separated from God. So therefore I sinned. I'm guilty of something. And guilt demands punishment. So there's fear of being punished. So sin, guilt, and fear come with us into the dream, so to speak, and it takes form. You can check out your day, check out your thoughts. Many, if not, well, I'm not going to say most, many of those thoughts have to do with I did something wrong or there's something wrong with me. I feel bad for some reason. I just feel bad about it, and something has to be done. You know, I deserve what's coming to me. Right? And even if I don't project that onto myself, I'll project that onto somebody else. You know, you're the guilty person, right? And you should be punished. Right? So he says it is essential, that you free yourself from fear quickly, because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. And that's what we would like to do. Right? I mean, and most of us, most of me, has to rededicate myself all through the day. I have to remind myself to come back from that road into fear and rededicate myself to bringing peace, allowing myself to be a channel, okay? And with practicing those things, you do become aware of when you're straying or when you have strayed into that world of fear. And now, you know, sometimes I compare myself to a chihuahua. I keep barking at people, keep barking at situations and things, you know. Because, I mean, why does a chihuahua bark? Because he's afraid. Not because he's a big tough guy. He just wants you to know, don't come near me. Don't come near me, I'll bite you. All right? And they're the smallest little dogs, but they're always barking at something. And that's just to let you know, get away, get away. All right, so sometimes I refer to myself as a chihuahua. All righty then. So I have to free myself from fear quickly in order to be a channel of peace, to bring peace to other minds. All right? And let me say, you know, because in the back of my head, the ego pops up and says, that's a very arrogant thing to think about yourself, that you're going to bring peace to other minds. Right? Who do you think you are? Don't you remember when you were like this and that? That's the ego. Because Jesus, quite a few times during the course of this text, and in the other books too, he will remind you that it's not an arrogant thought, it is the truth of who you are. Right? In this worldly situation, you are the bringer of peace, if you choose to be. Right? And even Jesus is kind enough to say, if you don't choose to be, I'll wait. I'll wait until you choose. Wait until you change your mind. Because eventually, life becomes so painful that you must get to the point where you say, there must be a better way. There must be a better way to live. Right? There must be a better way to interpret this world. Right? I remember one day I was so distraught, I was so upset and irritated, angry, okay? And I said to my friend Emily, who was just a wonderful spiritual counselor and a teacher of the course, Emily Andrews, who has since passed away. And I sat down before a class and I said, Emily, it can't be everybody. I mean, everybody can't be a schmuck. You know what I mean? Everybody can't be the guilty party. And that's a big realization when you come to that. You see, I have to play a big part in this, because it can't be everybody out there is doing something wrong. You know, and this course is very big on introspection, because as Dr. Wapnick would always say, you know, you remember there's nobody out there. All right? This is the one mind projecting can't be guilty. It has to project the guilt. All right? And that's why we're afraid of that term, the last judgment. Right? Because we know that in the final moment, you know, well, we've been taught that in the final moment, God's coming and he's going to say, really, you know, I remember what you did, right? And we're going to say, no, it wasn't me. It was him, right? But then there's all those horrible images that we get brought up in Western Christian world anyway, those horrible images of being cast into, you know, the inferno, the fires of hell, to be tormented forever with no chance of escape. That was pretty frightening for a young child. And we bring those thoughts with us, you know, no matter how much we say, no, I don't believe that anymore. Oh, you know? Because deep down inside, we're afraid of the presence of God. We're afraid of the presence of everything, right? That moment that even Eckhart Tolle speaks about, that realization of being in touch with all that is, the expansiveness, the Buddha mind, the Christ consciousness. Right? To some degree, we're afraid of that because we think it's time for the last judgment. You remember what you did, right? So, and we're brought up with that. That's ingrained in us. But Jesus is turning it around in these paragraphs here. He's going to turn that idea around, right? And he reminds us that judgment is not an attribute of God. God does not judge. God just sees you as the great rays of light that have extended from his mind. That's who you are. Those great rays of comforting bliss and peace. That's who you are. Right? That's in the reality of the oneness. Right? When we sneak out the back door, so to speak, or we think we did, and we ran into the forest to hide from God, right? We forget that. We dissociated from that. And what you dissociate from, you forget. So we dissociated from the oneness, from our true state of mind. And we forgot it. And what we believe is, you know, all these things that we keep projecting. We projected this frightening world. Right? I mean, there's moments of joy in the world, you know, but for the most part, it's a tough experience, you know. The great Irish poet laureate, he said, he had a quote, it said, being Irish, he had an abiding sense of gloom which sustained him during temporary periods of joy. And I always thought that was very funny. I thought that was very funny. All right, and as I'm talking, his name will pop up because I'm getting old, and sometimes names run away from me, but I'm going to catch it and bring it back. Okay, but anyway, in this world it's a gloomy place, mostly. All right, but remember, I'm getting sidetracked now, but judgment is not an attribute of God, okay? Paragraph 3. The last judgment is generally thought as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment. However much you may think that punishment is deserved. Punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness. And the aim of the last judgment is to restore right-mindedness to you. The last judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. After this, the ability to choose can be directed rationally. Until this distinction is made, however, the vacillations between free and imprisoned will cannot but continue. Right? So until this last judgment, so to speak, when we finally say no to the ego, right? That's the judgment. We look at the ego and we say, no, don't want it. Don't want it anymore. Okay? Right? He says, until we finally get to that final judgment, we will feel as though we're vacillating from right-mindedness, where we realize we are and we're willing to be channels of peace. It's just a wonderful state of existence. And then we let our minds wander into the detour into fear, as he says. And we start projecting guilt. Right? We become afraid, we become angry, all those negative things. Until we realize, oh wait, I'm letting the ego be my guide. I'm letting the ego guide me through the filter of, you left heaven, right? You did something wrong, you sinned, you're guilty, you better be afraid, right? And then we say, oh wait, I don't want that. And we come back to the right-mindedness. This is the way the process seems to be, okay? So, he says, but soon you will come to the point where you realize what is worthy and what is not. What is not worthy is all the nuttiness that goes on in the ego thought system, which is the thought system that says you separated from God. Right? There's something wrong with you. Now you're missing something. You're lacking something. All those thoughts come under that big umbrella of, I believe I separated from oneness. It's like I turned my back on everything. Now I have nothing. I'm lacking things. Now I need things. This will bring me comfort. This will bring me love. This will bring me pleasure. And we walk through the ego thought system. Okay? So, paragraph 4. The first step toward freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. This is a process of separation in a constructive sense and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse. Wow, there's another big-time frightening word, the apocalypse, the ultimate destruction of everything. All right? But what he's talking about in the apocalypse here, in our sense, is the destruction, so to speak, the deterioration, the falling away of the ego thought system. Right? And he says the first step involves sorting the false from the true. He's also going to say the meaningful from the meaningless. Right? And that's sometimes for me, that's an easier way to think of it. What's more meaningful? What is more meaningful in my life at this point? All right? And then that wonderful question, what is it for? Right? Is it for bringing me toward the awareness of peace? Or is it for reinforcing the idea of separation and conflict? Right? So what is meaningful and meaningless? What is useful and what is not useful? What is false and what is true? So everyone will ultimately look upon his own creations and choose to preserve only what is good. Right? Just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. Right? So that's like kind of quoting the Bible, like God looked on it and said it was good. All right? But what God, the original source, created was you, your mind, as part of his mind. His mind just extended, and there you are. And that's what you do in reality. You extend the love, right? You extend all those words, abundance, joy, kindness. It's all one big package that gets extended. Okay? So, but here on this earth plane, so to speak, we're going to look upon our own creations and choose to preserve what is good. Right? So our creations are our thoughts, but I think Jesus is using, both on the physical plane too. We're going to look at things that we think here. Right? Look at things that we've quote unquote made, right? And decide. We're going to look on them and decide what is good. Right? Well, what is good is all those loving thoughts that we've ever had. That's what's good. Right? That's what we want to keep, so to speak. Because everything else is just illusion. Right? I like that saying that says, every loving thought is true. Right? And that's what we will keep. Right? So just as God looked upon what he had created and knew it was good, at this point, the mind can begin to look with love on its own creations because of their worthiness. Right? So at this point, the mind is being reinforced by its own loving thoughts. Okay? And it can look with love on those loving thoughts. Because they're worthy. They are worthy of existence in the oneness. At the same time, the mind will inevitably disown its miscreations, which, without belief, will no longer exist. So at that point, the mind will just disown the miscreations, which begin with the thought that says, I'm separated from God. And everything after that is a miscreation, right? Because our creations are extensions of love. Our miscreations are extensions of the sin, guilt, and fear. So at the same time, the mind will inevitably disown them. No, I don't want them anymore. All right? And I just don't believe in them anymore. Because I believe I'm connected with the oneness. So without believing in the separation, they're gone. They're done. They disappear. They will no longer exist. All right? And I always hearken back to that word, relinquishment. But this goes a step further. It's like I'm relinquishing the belief in separation. I just put it down. I walk away from it. I disown it. And every silly miscreation just disappears along with it. So in the last paragraph, paragraph number 5, the term last judgment is frightening not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association of last with death. Right? This is an outstanding example of upside-down perception. If the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. No one who lives in fear is really alive. Your own last judgment cannot be directed toward yourself because you are not your own creation. You can, however, apply it meaningfully and at any time to everything you have made and retain in your memory only what is creative and good. This is what your right-mindedness cannot but decide. The purpose of time is solely to give you time to achieve this judgment. It is your own perfect judgment of your own perfect creations. When everything you retain is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. This is your part in the atonement. This is your part in the correction, right? That corrective thought that says you did not separate from your source. You did not separate from God. All right? So our part in the atonement is to retain everything that is lovable and to disown the miscreations, the thought of separation. And Jesus says that it's the purpose of time, right, to give you time, right, because we're, slow. Right? Like my grandmother used to say, just thick. Right, so we're a little thick. It takes time for us to drop our beliefs in separation and all the beliefs that come from separation. So it takes, quote unquote, time for us to do that because we're afraid of love. We're afraid of the image of God that we have projected. It's like he says, the term last judgment is frightening, not only because it has been projected onto God, like God is in charge now, right? But also because of the association of last with death. And that's what we think of. Oh, you die and then you get judged. Right? So there's another association of coming into the presence of God and you're dead. Right? So it becomes, and it's on a deep, deep level that we're afraid. Right? We have to let those fears rise up and look at them. And let them go. Say, no, I don't want that. All right. And here's where Jesus is turning that idea around. He says that if you really look at the meaning of the last judgment, he says it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. Right? Now, all these things I've just been saying about it is we're taking a final look at our miscreations, at the ego thought system, the belief in separation, and we're saying, no, I don't want that. I've judged against it. I don't want it. He says that becomes the doorway to life, your real life, right? The life of the awareness of how you fit in to the expansive, ever-expanding oneness, right? The infiniteness of heaven. Right? He says that is life. Okay. So the last judgment, turning away from the ego, right? The apocalypse, right? The destruction of the ego thought system, right? the disappearance of the ego thought system becomes your doorway to life. Right? It's just an awareness of who you are and where you fit in. Right? And in other parts of the book, Jesus will refer to what he calls the real world. Right? It's like a momentary precursor into just rejoining the mind of God. It's where you're in this world of form, but you have the realization of who and what you are, right? And what you're here for. Right? You become that channel of peace. You become that comforter. Right? And that is, you are full of life. You're full of life because you have judged against the ego thought system. You finally said, no, I do not want it. Okay? So, if the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. No one who lives in fear is really alive. Your own last judgment cannot be directed toward yourself because you are not your own creation. Right? But we realize that we're innocent. Okay? So he says, but you can apply this realization to everything and everyone. Right? And you retain in your memory only what is creative and what is good. All right? And he says the purpose of time, your purpose here in the confines, so it's the friendly confines of time and space, all right, that's to be used. Time will be used to give you time so you can work it out. So you can come to these conclusions on your own. Remember, Jesus says, I can't just come in and, flick a switch and make you believe. Right? This has to be our choice. So time is there, essentially, to give us time to make the choice. All right? To achieve this judgment. Okay. So, when everything you retain is lovable, so when everything in your mind is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. Right? Fear will be gone when all your thoughts are lovable. Right? All your thoughts are surrounded by love. He goes, that is your part in the atonement. You will have wakened. You will have woke, as they say. You will have awakened to the truth. Right? So the last judgment is not to be feared. It's to be invited. It's to be worked on. It's to, when we can finally say, no, I don't want the ego thought system. And there's that sense of joy because I am so free. Okay. Remember, God is never angry. Okay? So, I think we can end it there. And I think we will. So, keep on looking at when you stray into the ego thought system. Be very kind to yourself. Say, oh, I'm using the ego as my guide. I know where that goes. Don't want it anymore. And some days we do want it, but then we see, oh, that's pretty painful. That was a silly choice. And then we learn. We take time and we learn to finally say, no, I definitely don't want that. All right? So continue on your journeys, and I'll see you soon. Really.